"Will you
Listen to me.
split the
You can't
trunk,
stay
cowboy?"
here.
she
It's not
cried out,
safe.
clinging
We
tight
have to
and
go
not
right
trusting the
now."
old man. They were vast, stretching far beyond the fields where the cows grazed, and the wind bent the tall grass in quiet waves. The smell of wet earth, pine, and wildflowers always made her feel alive, as if the world outside the woods had no rules at all. That afternoon, the sun hung low in the sky, painting everything with golden light. Birds chirped softly, their songs weaving through the trees, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, whispering secrets that seemed meant only for those who were willing to listen. Clara walked carefully along a narrow dirt path, her curiosity pushing her further than she had ever gone before. She could hear the faint trickle of a stream somewhere in the distance, and imagined that following it might lead her to a hidden place no one else had ever discovered. She had been exploring for nearly an hour, stepping over roots and fallen branches, when something unusual caught her eye. Partially hidden behind a large oak tree, she saw a figure moving slowly, bending over a wooden chest. The chest itself looked old, its edges worn smooth by time, and it was covered in a light layer of moss. Clara froze, her heart beating faster than she had expected. She had never seen this man before, and yet there was something strangely familiar about the way he moved. His clothes were simple, a faded shirt tucked into worn trousers, and his hat was pulled low over his forehead. He didn't notice her at first, or maybe he did, but chose not to look up. Clara's curiosity wrestled with caution. She had been told by her grandmother never to approach strangers, especially in the woods, but the sight of the chest and the old man intrigued her too much to turn away. She crept closer, trying to make her presence known without startling him. "Hello," she called softly, her voice trembling just a little. The old man looked up suddenly, his eyes narrowing in surprise. There was a moment of silence, just long enough for Clara to feel the weight of the tension between them. She swallowed and tried again, this time louder and more confident. "Will you split the trunk, cowboy?" she asked, half teasing, half serious, and she clung lightly to a nearby tree, not fully trusting him. The old man's eyebrows lifted, and for a second he looked uncertain. Then a faint smile appeared, though it was tinged with sadness. He straightened slowly and gestured for Clara to step closer, though she stayed where she was, measuring every movement. "That's an unusual question from someone your age," he said, his voice deep and rough but not unkind. "Why do you want to see what's inside?" Clara hesitated, unsure how to explain herself. I don't know," she admitted honestly. "I just want to know. It looks important. I want to see it, and maybe I want to understand why it's here." She didn't know if her words made sense, but somehow they felt true. The old man studied her for a long moment, as if weighing her words against something invisible, some secret test only he could see. Finally, he nodded and slowly lifted the heavy lid of the chest. The hinges creaked, and a musty, earthy smell floated out, carrying the scent of old wood, leather, and memories long tucked away. Inside, the chest was filled not with gold or jewels, but with items that seemed ordinary at first glance. There were letters tied with faded ribbons, photographs with curled edges, and small trinkets that might have belonged to children long grown. Clara's eyes widened. It's beautiful," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if beauty was the right word. It felt more like a secret world, one that had survived years and stories that no one else would remember. The old man crouched beside her, his hands hovering over the objects as though touching them might break a spell. "These are memories," he said softly. "Not all memories are happy, and not all are easy, but they all tell who we were, and sometimes who we can be." Clara nodded slowly, her fear giving way to fascination. She reached out tentatively to touch a photograph of a smiling young couple, unaware that she was bridging the distance between suspicion and trust. The old man watched her carefully, letting her explore without interfering, giving her space to feel what he felt, though he said nothing more. The woods around them seemed to quiet as if respecting the moment. A squirrel paused on a branch above, blinking at them, and the wind held its breath. Clara picked up a small locket, turning it in her hands. It was delicate, and the tiny hinge creaked as she opened it to reveal a faded picture inside. Her fingers lingered on it, imagining the story behind that small image. The old man finally spoke, his voice steady but soft. "I've kept these things safe for a long time. Some were given to me, some I found along the way, and some are pieces of me I needed to remember." Clara felt a shiver run down her spine. She realized this encounter was not about adventure or curiosity anymore. It was about history, about life. The old man had carried these objects through storms, through years of loneliness, and perhaps through regrets he never voiced. She looked at him and saw not a stranger but a guardian of stories. And for the first time she understood that trust wasn't given lightly, it was built, step by careful step. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. I think I can trust you," she said quietly. She felt a little foolish, saying it out loud, but it was important. The old man's face softened, a small, almost imperceptible nod acknowledging her courage. He didn't speak again immediately, instead letting the silence hold them together, filled only by the gentle sounds of the forest around them. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Clara explored the chest with care, asking questions about small objects, learning names, dates, and places. Each answer seemed to open a door in her mind, a small window into a life she had never known but that felt somehow connected to her own. The old man shared stories sparingly, always observing her reactions, letting her decide which details mattered most. Clara realized she was learning not just about him, but about patience, respect, and the weight of memory. Eventually, the sunlight began to fade, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Clara realized it was getting late, and she would need to return to her grandparents before darkness fell. But something had changed. The fear she had felt when she first saw the chest had been replaced by a deep sense of wonder. She looked at the old man, noticing the lines on his face, the gentleness in his eyes, and the careful way he handled the chest. "Thank you," she said softly, "for letting me see." The old man gave her a small, knowing smile. "Not everyone is ready to see," he said, "and not everyone can, but you asked the right question. You had the courage to wonder, and that matters more than anything else." Clara nodded, feeling warmth spread through her chest. She had stepped into the woods seeking adventure, but she was leaving with something far more valuable, a lesson about trust, history, and the power of stories. As she walked back toward the farmhouse, the trees swaying gently overhead, she glanced back one last time. The old man was still there, kneeling by the chest, as if he were part of the forest itself. She smiled to herself, realizing that she would never forget this encounter. It was a moment that had started with fear and suspicion, but ended in understanding and quiet friendship. And somewhere deep inside, she knew she would carry the lessons of that afternoon with her forever, long after the woods were behind her. Clara woke the next morning with a restless curiosity buzzing in her mind. The memories of the chest, the old man, and the treasures it held seemed to float in her thoughts like delicate leaves caught in a stream. She could still feel the rough texture of the photographs, the weight of the locket in her hand, and the quiet strength of the man who had shared them. The forest, which had once seemed merely a playground for her adventures, now held a deeper significance. It was a place where stories lived, where history whispered, and where trust, once earned, became a fragile but beautiful bond. She dressed quickly, careful not to wake her grandparents, and stepped outside into the crisp morning air. The sun was just beginning to rise, sending warm, orange light across the fields. Birds sang in the distance, and the smell of damp earth and wildflowers filled the air. Clara walked slowly toward the woods, her mind replaying every detail of the previous day. She wasn't sure what she expected to find, perhaps the old man again, perhaps more mysteries, but her heart carried a mixture of excitement and caution. She remembered the way he had looked at her, the gentle patience in his eyes, and the unspoken stories that had passed between them. The path through the trees felt familiar now, each step stirring the leaves and twigs underfoot. Clara's eyes scanned the surroundings carefully, hoping to catch a glimpse of the old man or the chest. As she walked deeper into the woods, she noticed small signs of life she had never paid attention to before. The way sunlight created patterns on the forest floor, the tiny insects crawling along branches, and the distant rustle of a deer moving quietly through the undergrowth. The world seemed alive, and Clara felt as though she were stepping into a living story, one that had been waiting for her all along. After a short while, she reached the place where she had seen the old man the day before. The chest was still there, partially hidden beneath the oak tree as if it had been waiting for her return. And then she saw him. The old man was kneeling beside the trunk, carefully arranging its contents. His hands moved with a precision that suggested years of practice, yet there was a gentleness in every motion. He looked up when he noticed her approaching and offered a small, welcoming smile. Clara hesitated for a moment, her instinct for caution reminding her to stay back, but curiosity pushed her forward. "Good morning," she said softly. I thought I should come back." The old man nodded slowly, his eyes kind but thoughtful. "I wondered if you would," he replied. "There is more to these things than meets the eye. If you are ready, I can show you some of the stories that accompany them." Clara's heart raced. She stepped closer, careful not to disturb the arrangement of letters, photographs, and trinkets. She felt a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness, as if she were entering someone else's world without permission. Yet the old man's calm presence reassured her, and she realized that trust, once given, required courage to maintain. He began by picking up a small, worn notebook. Its cover was frayed, and the pages smelled faintly of ink and age. He opened it carefully and handed it to Clara. "This belonged to my sister," he explained. "She wrote her thoughts here during a time when the world felt heavy. Some entries are happy, some are sad, but all of them tell the truth of her life." Clara took the notebook gently, her fingers tracing the faded handwriting. Each word seemed to carry emotion, the kind of emotion that could not be taught or forced. She felt a deep connection, not just to the old man, but to the sister whose thoughts had been preserved through decades. As Clara read, the old man shared small stories about the people behind the objects in the chest. There was a set of letters tied with a ribbon, written between two childhood friends who had been separated by distance and circumstance. Each letter was filled with hopes, fears, and small joys, and Clara listened as he recited passages aloud, his voice soft but steady. She could picture the people, their faces and gestures, and for a moment it felt as if the forest itself had vanished, leaving only the lives of those who had come before. Time seemed to pass differently in the woods that day. Hours slipped by unnoticed as Clara and the old man continued to explore the chest together. She asked questions, sometimes simple and sometimes complex, and he answered each one with patience. There were moments of silence where no words were spoken, and yet the connection between them deepened. Clara realized that the old man was teaching her something far more important than facts or stories. He was teaching her to observe, to listen, and to respect the past. At one point, Clara picked up a small, intricately carved wooden toy. It was worn smooth by countless hands, and she could see the tiny scratches and dents that told the story of its use. "Who owned this?" she asked, holding it carefully. "That belonged to a boy who lived here long ago," the old man replied. "He loved to carve small things just like this, and he found joy in the simplest of tasks. Life was not always easy for him, but he found ways to make it beautiful." Clara turned the toy over in her hands, imagining the boy's small fingers carefully shaping it. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, a mix of empathy and admiration. The past felt alive, not as distant history, but as a series of moments that could teach lessons even today. The old man then guided her attention to a photograph of a young couple standing beside a river. Their faces were bright with smiles, but their eyes hinted at struggles beneath the surface. "They were my parents," he said quietly. "They faced challenges that would have broken many people, but they stayed together. They taught me the importance of perseverance, kindness, and love, even in difficult times." Clara looked at the photograph, seeing not just two people frozen in an image, but a lifetime of lessons captured in a single moment. She felt humbled by the trust he placed in her by sharing such personal memories. As the sun began to sink lower in the sky, casting long shadows through the trees, Clara realized that she had been in the woods all day. Yet she felt no fatigue, only a sense of wonder and fulfillment. She had learned not just about the objects and the stories, but about herself. She understood that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face it. She had begun the day uncertain and hesitant, but she was leaving with confidence and insight that felt new and precious. The old man closed the chest carefully, ensuring that each item was secure. "These stories are not just mine," he said. "They belong to anyone who is willing to see, to learn, and to carry them forward. You have shown that you can do that." Clara nodded, her eyes bright with gratitude. She had come seeking adventure and found something far richer, a connection to history, a mentor in the old man, and a deeper understanding of trust and empathy. Before leaving, Clara turned to him one last time. Will you let me come back again?" she asked softly. The old man smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "Yes," he said. "There is always more to share and there is always more to learn. But remember, these lessons require care, respect, and patience. Are you ready for that?" Clara nodded firmly. She knew that the journey was just beginning. The forest, the chest, and the old man had opened a door to a world she had never imagined, one where the past was alive, where trust was earned, and where stories could shape a person's life. She took a deep breath, letting the cool evening air fill her lungs, and walked back toward her grandparents' house with a heart full of wonder and determination. That night, as she lay in bed, Clara thought about all she had seen and learned. The chest was more than a collection of objects. It was a gateway to understanding, a bridge between generations, and a reminder that every person carries stories worth sharing. She promised herself that she would return, that she would continue to listen, learn, and grow. And somewhere deep inside, she knew that the old man and the chest had changed her forever. The next day, Clara felt a pull in her chest, a quiet insistence that she return to the woods. Her grandparents were busy in the farmhouse, and she knew she had the freedom of the morning to explore. The memory of the old man, the chest, and the stories they had shared called to her, as if the forest itself had sent the invitation. With a small bag packed with water and a notebook to record her thoughts, she stepped lightly through the fields, feeling the soft warmth of the sun on her face. The path to the oak tree was familiar now, each step bringing a sense of anticipation mingled with respect. As she entered the woods, she noticed details she had never paid attention to before. The way sunlight filtered through the branches, casting golden patterns on the ground, the gentle sway of ferns in the breeze, the faint sound of a stream trickling in the distance. It was as if the forest had a heartbeat of its own, steady and comforting. Clara's senses felt heightened. Every sound, every movement seemed important, as though the world had opened a door just for her. She approached the oak tree and saw the old man kneeling beside the chest as though he had been waiting for her. He looked up and offered a gentle nod. "Good morning, Clara," he said. "I thought you might return." Clara smiled nervously. "I couldn't stay away," she admitted. "There's so much I want to understand." The old man's eyes softened. "There is always more to learn," he said. "Some lessons are found in objects, some in stories, and some in the spaces between words." He motioned for her to sit beside him. The morning air was cool, carrying the scents of pine and earth, and the gentle rustle of leaves added a quiet rhythm to their meeting. Clara reached for a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. "Can you tell me about these?" she asked. The old man smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder in a reassuring gesture. "These letters belong to two friends," he began. "They were separated by distance, circumstances, and the expectations of others. But they wrote to each other constantly, sharing their dreams, their fears, and their small joys. Each letter was a thread that kept them connected, even when life tried to pull them apart." As he spoke, Clara unfolded one of the letters carefully. The handwriting was neat, yet each word carried emotion, hope, doubt, love, and longing. She read silently, feeling the weight of their words as though they had been written just for her. The old man watched her with quiet approval. "Do you see?" he said softly. "Stories are more than just words. They are lifelines connecting one heart to another. They teach patience, empathy, and understanding. They remind us that we are never truly alone." Clara nodded, her fingers brushing over the paper. She had never considered that objects could carry so much meaning. Each letter, each photograph, each small trinket was a doorway into someone else's life, someone else's experiences. It was humbling and inspiring all at once. She felt a growing respect for the old man, who had cared for these items for so many years, understanding their value not in terms of money or fame, but in the stories they preserved. The old man reached into the chest and pulled out a small, carved wooden box. It was intricately designed, with delicate patterns etched into the surface. "This belonged to my mother," he said. "She used it to keep notes, reminders, and small treasures from her own childhood. To her, every object had a story, a lesson, or a memory attached. She believed that even the simplest things could teach something important if we took the time to notice." Clara opened the box carefully. Inside were tiny objects: a pressed flower, a coin, a small fragment of cloth. Each item seemed ordinary, but as she held them, she could almost feel the history embedded in their surfaces. She could imagine the hands that had held them, the moments of joy or sadness they had witnessed, and the care with which they had been preserved. Her mind raced with questions, each answer revealing more about the past and the people who had lived before her. "Why do you keep all of this?" she asked finally, her voice low. The old man paused. "Because stories matter," he said simply. "They are the threads that weave a life together. Without them, we are only moving from one day to the next without understanding why. By preserving these stories, I am preserving a part of myself, my family, and the people who trusted me with their memories. And now, Clara, I am sharing them with you because I believe you are ready to carry them forward." Clara felt a lump in her throat. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but it was also an honor. She understood that trust, once given, was sacred. It required care, patience, and respect. She nodded slowly, determined to meet the challenge. "I will," she whispered. The old man's eyes softened further. "Good. Remember, it is not about keeping everything perfect. It is about noticing, learning, and sharing. Stories are living things. They grow, change, and evolve. Our job is simply to pay attention and honor them." They spent the next hour exploring more objects from the chest. There was a photograph of a small boy with a wooden toy, smiling brightly despite the worn clothes he wore. "He loved simple things," the old man explained. "A toy, a book, a flower. He found joy in moments others might overlook. It's easy to forget that happiness doesn't need to be grand. It can be found in the smallest details if we allow ourselves to see it." Clara held the photograph in her hands, imagining the boy's laughter, the way sunlight would have fallen on his face, the warmth of a parent's hug. She felt a deep sense of connection, as if the boy's joy had traveled through time to reach her. She realized that stories were not just lessons in the abstract. They were lessons in feeling, in experiencing life fully and openly. Next, they came across a bundle of postcards, each sent from a different city, country, or village. They were messages of hope, updates on life, and simple greetings meant to maintain bonds across distances. Clara read a few aloud, and the old man corrected her gently when she mispronounced names or dates. With each postcard, she felt the world expanding, realizing that people, even those she would never meet, could touch her life through words and memories. Time passed quickly in the woods, and soon the sun began to dip toward the horizon. Shadows stretched long and the air turned cooler. Clara realized that she had been there all day, yet she felt no exhaustion. Instead, she felt enriched, as though she had collected a treasure far more valuable than gold or jewels, the treasure of understanding, empathy, and connection. Before leaving, the old man closed the chest carefully, ensuring each object was safe. "Remember, Clara," he said, "the chest is not just mine. It belongs to anyone willing to see, listen, and learn. You are now part of its story. Carry it with care, and it will teach you more than you can imagine." Clara looked at him, her heart full. "I will," she said firmly. "I promise." As she walked back through the woods, the forest seemed different. Each tree, each rustling leaf, each bird call felt like part of a living story. She realized that the old man had given her more than lessons about objects or history. He had given her a new way to see the world, a way to pay attention to life itself. That night, lying in her bed, Clara opened her notebook and began writing. She recorded the letters, the photographs, and the stories she had learned that day. She wrote about the boy with the wooden toy, the postcards, and the old man's gentle wisdom. With each word, she felt a deep satisfaction. She knew that she was not only preserving the stories she had encountered, but also beginning her own story, a story shaped by curiosity, trust, and the willingness to learn from those who came before her. As sleep finally came, Clara felt a quiet excitement. She knew that tomorrow she would return to the chest and the old man. There were still so many stories to hear, so many lessons to learn, and she was eager to discover them all. The day had taught her patience, empathy, and the value of listening. She realized that true understanding required more than just seeing. It required feeling, reflecting, and carrying what was learned into one's own life. And somewhere deep in her heart, Clara understood that this was only the beginning. The chest, the woods, and the old man had opened a door to a world she had never imagined. A world where the past was alive, stories mattered, and trust, once earned, could change the way a person saw everything. The next morning, Clara woke with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The memory of the chest and the old man filled her thoughts as she dressed quickly. Today felt different. She had learned so much, yet she sensed that there was more to discover, lessons that could not be seen at first glance, stories that required courage to understand fully. She packed her small bag with her notebook and water bottle, making sure to move quietly so as not to disturb her grandparents. Her feet carried her swiftly across the fields, each step a quiet drumbeat of anticipation. When she entered the woods, the familiar scent of pine and earth greeted her. Sunlight filtered through the branches, scattering patterns on the forest floor. Birds sang their morning songs, and a gentle breeze stirred the leaves overhead. Clara's heart raced as she approached the oak tree. She could see the old man already kneeling by the chest, carefully arranging its contents. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and offered a small, approving smile. "Good morning, Clara," he said. "I wondered if you would return so soon." "I couldn't wait," Clara replied. "There's still so much I want to understand." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Learning takes patience," he said, "but courage is equally important. Today, we will explore more than the objects themselves. We will see what they reveal about life, and perhaps about ourselves." Clara sat beside him, feeling the soft earth beneath her and the comforting presence of the old man. He opened the chest slowly, revealing the familiar letters, photographs, and trinkets. Yet today, the objects seemed different. They carried a new weight, a deeper meaning, as if they were waiting for her to see beyond their surfaces. He handed Clara a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. These were exchanged between two friends separated by distance, he explained. They wrote constantly, sharing joys, fears, and small victories. Life was not easy for them, but these letters kept their spirits alive. Read them carefully and try to imagine the person behind each word. Clara unfolded a letter and began to read. The handwriting was neat but carried a quiet urgency, a longing that touched her heart. She felt a strange connection to the writer, imagining their daily life, their hopes, and the small struggles they faced. The old man watched her closely, noticing the way her eyes softened, the way she held the letter as if it were precious. "These stories," he said softly, "are not just about the past. They are lessons for today. They teach patience, empathy, and resilience. Sometimes we face moments that feel impossible, but stories like these remind us that endurance and care can carry us through." Clara nodded, her fingers tracing the edges of the paper. "It feels like they're speaking to me," she said quietly, "like they're guiding me in some way." "Exactly," the old man replied. "Stories have a power that can reach across time and space. They teach us how to see, how to feel, and how to act." As they continued, the old man showed her a small, worn wooden toy. Its edges were smooth from years of handling, and tiny scratches hinted at countless adventures. "This belonged to a boy who lived here long ago," he explained. "Even though life was difficult, he found joy in simple things. A toy, a flower, a moment in nature. He appreciated it all. Happiness often hides in the smallest details, waiting for someone to notice." Clara held the toy carefully, imagining the boy's laughter, the sunlight falling across his face, and the joy that he must have felt. She realized that life's richness was not always in grand events but in the quiet, overlooked moments. Suddenly, a sound interrupted their calm. Dark clouds began to gather overhead and the wind picked up, rustling the leaves with more urgency. Clara's stomach tightened as she glanced at the sky. A storm was approaching faster than she had expected. "We should be careful," she said, her voice tense. "I don't want to leave the chest unprotected." The old man nodded. "We will manage. There is a lesson in this too," he said quietly. "Sometimes life brings unexpected challenges. The way we respond to them shows our character." Clara felt a mix of fear and determination. The woods that had been so inviting now seemed slightly menacing under the gray sky. Rain began to fall in small, cold drops, and the wind pushed her hair across her face. Yet she stayed beside the old man, holding her notebook and watching as he carefully adjusted the lid of the chest to keep it safe from the elements. "This is what I mean," he said, his voice calm amid the storm. "Challenges come, whether we are ready or not. Fear is natural, but courage means moving forward anyway. Trust is part of that courage. Trust in yourself and trust in those who show care and patience." Clara took a deep breath, steadying her shaking hands. She realized that this moment, the storm, the fear, and her choice to stay, was a lesson in itself. She had faced uncertainty and remained, proving to herself that she could handle more than she had imagined. Together, they worked quickly, securing the contents of the chest and ensuring that the letters and photographs were safe. Rain began to fall harder, tapping against the leaves and the ground with a steady rhythm. Clara felt a strange sense of calm amid the chaos, her fear giving way to focus and understanding. She was learning that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. Once the chest was secure, the old man looked at Clara with a quiet smile. "You have learned well," he said. "Trust, patience, and courage are all part of life's lessons. Today, you have shown that you can face fear and still make thoughtful choices." Clara felt a swell of pride. She had been hesitant, unsure, and cautious, yet she had stayed and acted with care. The storm no longer seemed frightening. It felt like a teacher, showing her the strength she carried inside herself. They sat together under the oak tree, listening to the rain fall and the wind move through the branches. The forest, even in the storm, was alive and beautiful, filled with lessons hidden in every sound and movement. Clara realized that life itself was like this storm, unpredictable, sometimes challenging, but filled with moments of wonder and opportunity if one approached it with courage and trust. After a while, the rain eased, leaving a fresh scent of earth and leaves. The sun broke through the clouds in soft, golden rays, illuminating the forest in a warm, comforting light. Clara stood, brushing the mud from her clothes, and looked at the old man. "Thank you," she said softly, "for letting me stay and for showing me all of this." He nodded. "You are welcome. Remember, every challenge, every fear, and every story has a lesson. Carry them with you, and you will always find guidance, even in the most difficult moments." Clara smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. She had come seeking adventure and found lessons in courage, patience, and trust. She had faced fear in the form of a storm and discovered that resilience came from within, guided by wisdom and experience. As she walked back through the forest toward her grandparents' house, she reflected on the day. The storm had tested her, but it had also strengthened her. The old man and the chest had shown her that life's lessons were not always easy or comfortable, but they were always valuable. She understood now that trust was fragile but powerful, that courage was not about being fearless, and that stories carried lessons that could shape a person's heart and mind. That night, Clara sat in her room with her notebook, recording the events of the day. She wrote about the letters, the toy, the rain, and the lessons she had learned. She described the fear she had felt and the courage she had discovered. Each word was a reminder that life was filled with challenges, but that with trust, patience, and wisdom, she could navigate them successfully. Clara understood that part 4 of her journey was about growth. The storm had been a test, but it had also been a teacher. She had learned to trust herself, to act with care, and to recognize the value of stories and memories. She felt a growing sense of confidence, knowing that she was becoming more capable, thoughtful, and aware of the world around her. As she drifted to sleep, Clara knew that the journey with the old man and the chest was far from over. There were still stories to hear, lessons to learn, and moments to cherish. But she also understood that she had taken an important step forward, one that would stay with her forever. She had faced uncertainty, embraced trust, and discovered courage, and she carried all of it quietly in her heart as she slept. The following morning, Clara woke with a quiet sense of anticipation. The forest had become more than a place of curiosity. It was now a space of learning, reflection, and discovery. She dressed carefully, feeling a sense of purpose in each movement. Today, she knew, would be different from the days before. The old man and the chest had taught her patience, courage, and the importance of trust, but Clara felt there was still one final lesson waiting for her, a lesson about endings, beginnings, and the value of carrying stories forward. The sunlight broke gently over the fields as she crossed them, the warmth filling her with a sense of calm. Birds sang softly, and the wind moved with a comforting rhythm through the grass. Clara's notebook was tucked under her arm, ready to record everything she learned. As she entered the woods, the familiar smells of pine, earth, and moss greeted her. Every step seemed to echo the lessons of the previous days. Observe carefully, listen deeply, and honor what you find. At the oak tree, the old man was already there, kneeling by the chest. He looked up as she approached, his eyes meeting hers with the quiet wisdom she had come to trust. "Good morning, Clara," he said. "I knew you would return. Today is a day for reflection." Clara nodded, sitting beside him. She felt a mix of excitement and solemnity. The chest lay open before them, each item a testament to a life lived, a story preserved, and a lesson shared. Letters, photographs, and small trinkets filled the chest, each carrying weight far beyond its size or appearance. Clara reached for a photograph of a young couple standing beside a river. She remembered the story of the old man's parents, their perseverance, love, and courage, and she felt a quiet admiration. They taught you so much, Clara said softly. Even without being here today, their lessons still guide you. Yes, the old man replied. And now they are teaching you too. Stories are not just about remembering the past, they are about carrying wisdom forward. Life moves quickly, and it is easy to forget, but lessons live on in those who are willing to listen and learn. Clara carefully lifted a small, worn toy from the chest. Its edges were smooth, showing years of use, and tiny scratches marked its history. This boy, she said, he found happiness in simple things. I think I understand now. Happiness is about noticing, appreciating, and being present. The old man smiled. Exactly. Life is made of small moments. The more we notice and treasure them, the richer our lives become. It is not the grand achievements alone that define us, but the small acts of care, observation, and courage. As they continued exploring the chest together, Clara began to feel the weight of the responsibility she had been given. The chest, its objects, and the stories they held were precious. They were lessons in history, empathy, and resilience. She understood that her role was no longer just to observe, but to honor these stories, to carry them forward in her own way. After a while, the old man closed the chest partially, leaving a few items visible. Clara, he said, do you see now why trust is so important? You have watched, listened, and learned without taking more than you were allowed. You have respected the stories and the lives behind them. That is trust in action. Trust is not just given, it is earned through care, patience, and understanding. Clara felt a swell of pride. She had come to the woods seeking adventure and curiosity, but she was leaving with wisdom, respect, and a deeper understanding of human connection. She realized that the old man had not only taught her about the past, but about life itself, the quiet, profound lessons that cannot be found in books or classrooms, but only through attention, care, and empathy. Suddenly, a soft breeze carried the scent of rain from a distant storm. Clara glanced toward the sky, noting the subtle shift in light and air. It reminded her of the previous day, when the storm had tested her courage and trust. She smiled, recalling how she had faced her fear and learned the power of resilience. Life would always bring challenges, she realized, but she now understood that each challenge held lessons if one approached it with an open heart. The old man reached for a small bundle of letters and handed it to her. These are for you, he said. They are not mine to keep forever. They belong to anyone willing to learn. You are ready to take them, to honor them, and to share their lessons when the time is right. Clara took the letters gently, feeling their weight in her hands. She understood that this was more than a gift. It was a trust, a passing of responsibility, and a confirmation that she had grown through the experience. I promise to take care of them, she said softly. I will keep their stories alive. The old man's eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction. That is all I ask. Stories must be respected, preserved, and shared. They are the threads that connect us, not only to the past but to the people who will come after us. You are now part of that chain, Clara. Clara felt tears welling in her eyes. The realization of her growth, the lessons she had learned, and the trust she had earned filled her with emotion. She had entered the forest uncertain and hesitant, but she was leaving confident, thoughtful, and ready to embrace the responsibilities of life and learning. As they carefully closed the chest, ensuring each object was secure, Clara felt a sense of finality. The chest had been a doorway, a guide, and a teacher. It had tested her courage, nurtured her curiosity, and strengthened her empathy. She looked at the old man, who nodded in quiet acknowledgement, and she knew that their time together in the woods had come to a natural pause. "Will I see you again?" she asked softly, not wanting to leave but understanding the importance of parting. The old man smiled. "Perhaps," he said, "but remember, you do not need me to continue learning. The lessons are within you now. The stories, the experiences, and the trust you have earned will guide you. You carry them with you wherever you go." Clara nodded, feeling a mixture of sadness and gratitude. She stood, brushing the dirt from her clothes, and took one last look at the chest and the old man. The forest seemed to glow in the soft afternoon light, every tree, leaf, and shadow carrying a sense of peace and understanding. She felt connected not only to the old man and the objects, but to the countless lives represented within the chest. As she walked back through the woods toward her grandparents' house, Clara reflected on everything she had learned. Trust, patience, courage, and empathy were not abstract ideas. They were living lessons, woven into experiences, objects, and stories. She realized that life would always present challenges, moments of doubt, and opportunities for growth, and she now felt equipped to face them with awareness and care. That evening, Clara sat in her room with her notebook, carefully recording the final lessons she had learned. She wrote about the letters, the photographs, the small toy, and the trust placed in her by the old man. She wrote about courage, fear, empathy, and the quiet beauty of understanding another person's life. Each word was a reminder of the journey she had taken and the growth she had experienced. As sleep came, Clara felt a deep sense of peace. The chest, the old man, and the forest had given her more than she had expected. They had given her wisdom, empathy, and the confidence to carry stories forward. She understood that life itself was a series of lessons, some small, some large, all meaningful, and that trust, once earned, was one of the most precious gifts a person could receive. And somewhere in the quiet of the night, Clara made a promise to herself. She would honor the stories she had encountered, continue to seek understanding, and approach life with the courage, patience, and empathy she had learned in the woods. The chest had closed, the old man had shared his wisdom, and the forest had whispered its lessons, but Clara knew that the journey of learning, trusting, and growing was only beginning. She would carry it forward, quietly, bravely, and with a heart open to all the stories the world had yet to reveal. The sun rose the next day, casting soft light across the fields, and Clara walked toward a new beginning. She felt stronger, wiser, and more aware of the threads that connected her to the past, the present, and the future. She had learned that life was not only about adventures but about understanding, empathy, and the courage to trust. And with that understanding, Clara knew she was ready for whatever the next chapter of her life would bring.